Consumers want to know the facts about the products they buy, but America's agricultural landscape is not easy to navigate. Between different companies, scientific advancement, government regulations, advertisement campaigns, and an unhealthy amount of myth and misconception, anyone would be hard-pressed to make sense of it. That's where Real Ag comes in. From the producers who make your food, to the store where you buy the final product, and everything in between. This is Real Ag. Now, here's your host, Kyle Bauer.
Many of us enjoy using great amounts of water every year, but only some of us know how much water a farmer actually uses each year. We'll be taking a closer look at where our water is sourced and speak with the director of the Kansas Water Office, as well as talk to an advocate for sustainable food production, as we take a look at water technology on this episode of Real Ag.
Production of Real Ag is made possible in part by an underwriting grant from
the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by farmers.
What water conservation measures are utilized today?
Well, water conservation really in western Kansas is all about reducing pumping, reducing the amount of irrigation water applied by adopting technology and using different crop varieties to ultimately slow down the decline of the Ogallala Aquifer is really what drives the technology farm effort out in western Kansas.
We're actually formed a WCA, a water conservation area, so our historical pumping we've cut back 15%, but to help us do that with technology, we've actually on a center pivot, we've been using IWABs, and it actually throws water out in droplets. We're converting every pivot to either bubblers and or dragon line, and it puts the water right on the ground. Reduces evaporation by at least 95%, so the water actually does hit the ground instead of evaporating in the atmosphere or up on the leaves.
Where is the water sourced from?
We use the Ogallala Aquifer, and we also have, when available, we have surface water, which comes out of Colorado from the John Martin Reservoir.
Can the Ogallala Aquifer sustainably provide water for agriculture?
No, it cannot, not if we don't take some steps to conserve it.
Well, the Ogallala Aquifer is highly variable, and it depends on how much broad scale adoption we see of conservation measures to really answer that question. But the Kansas Geological Survey has measured wells for decades. All over the Ogallala and the High Plains Aquifer. So we have a really good handle on aquifer levels. And each year you'll see reports come out of, whether the aquifer declined or was it level, or did it even go up in some places. And so in areas where we have conservation, we've seen a very good response in the aquifer. The local enhanced management area in Sheridan County is a good example of a program that's been in place for, 5 years now. And we've seen the aquifer levels slow down, and in 1 year in particular, the aquifer levels actually went up, and we've seen that in other areas too. So there's some areas I don't know that there's any amount of conservation that will save the aquifer, but we're seeing some projections that the Geological Survey are providing from these well measurements and the water use reports that would suggest that some modest reductions in pumping can really stabilize the aquifer in some areas.
How are we taking steps to maintain the aquifer?
Well, actually, if you look at the water tech farms, the state has started a process, water conservation area or LEMA, local enhanced management area. And we're just going to have to be better stewards of what we've been doing. Not that we've been abusing it, but if we're looking towards the future, we're actually going to have to figure out a better water management plan to make the decline level off or even lessen the decline. The technology's coming. It's here. We just have to give it an opportunity to work.
Are we just maintaining the aquifer at this point?
We're absolutely not maintaining on the decline. We're gonna, if it doesn't rain this summer, the state of Kansas, the Division of Water Resource, there's index wells that shows it, and on the Kansas Geological, you can see it. Actually all the water levels either maintained or actually went up a little bit, but we've had surface water in the ditches for recharge. Like I said, we had 22 inches of rain. The year before, we had 24 inches of rain. That's not normal for us. Last year we had a 2-foot snow event in April. So if we're looking at a leveling off of the Ogallala, what I'm saying is at the end of this year, it's going to be interesting to see if it doesn't rain, how much the aquifer will have declines.
How has water conservation affected overall productivity for the producer?
You know, it's really been anecdotal at this point, but what we're seeing is everybody that we've talked to that's a technology farm sponsor or host, they have not indicated they've seen any dip in either net farm income or much change in yield.
Actually, we actually went also to a soil moisture probe. So with the new nozzle packages, with the soil moisture probes, we've actually seen our yields increase. We've reduced water, we've reduced energy cost. We've actually seen yields have increased. We've been overwatering.
How is technology changing the irrigation industry?
The water technology farms have been very popular. They were part of the governor's water vision. And the idea there was to take technology that you might see on a field plot, or they go to trade shows and see new gadgetry, if you will. But you know, it takes a significant investment to apply those to a farm scale. And so the input we received in the vision planning process was take this technology to a real farm, and let's apply that with some conservation measures, you know, whether that's a LEMA, a local enhanced management area, or water conservation area where the producer has agreed to reduce pumping. And then let's apply these different technologies that are out there and see which ones work the best and which ones don't. And ultimately, the goal is to reduce pumping and maintain profitability. So these started 3 years ago. We started with 3, and we have more than a dozen of them now. And so they've been very popular, and the results have been very, very positive so far. We've expanded, actually, this would be the 3rd year of the program. We had 3 the first year, and then last year we expanded to Northwest Kansas and into West Central Kansas. And then this year we've expanded again. So it's really kind of been a word of mouth thing, and as folks have seen the results of the earlier farms, there's been a high level of interest in seeing these really throughout the High Plains Aquifer. We have some as far east as Sedgwick and Harvey County now.
Is there a financial incentive for producers to take advantage of this program?
Well, through really public-private partnerships, we have been able to raise some funding that will help defray the cost of the equipment. And in some cases, the producers have had to put in, you know, a very nominal amount of money to get the technology applied to their farms. What they give in return is access. Field days, sharing information on how their input cost changed as a result of the technology, how their yields changed, how their water use changed as a result of the technology, and again, making the farm available for the public to learn from. And so it's been a good arrangement that way, and it's really had very little state funding. The irrigation industry, farm groups, particularly Kansas Corn, has been very involved in this program and have helped fund it. The other thing that's neat about it is folks that donate to the technology farms, we're working with Kansas Farm Bureau and their Ag Foundation so that they're handling really all the accounting for the technology farm program. So when we get donations from whether it's Kansas Corn or it's one of the irrigation dealers, their dollars go to Kansas Farm Bureau, and then obviously they get some tax benefits from that. And it's really a good place to kind of have kind of an off-site location for the accounting of the program, and it's worked really well, and we really appreciate Farm Bureau making their foundation available. It's another incentive for folks to invest in this.
Do you see this technology going international?
You know, one of the pieces of this is Kansas State University provides a lot of the research component and the oversight. And so their network is very broad. And so we do see, maybe not so much internationally, but we will see folks from other states come in. And I've been to different meetings around the Great Plains region where there's been a high level of interest. They've heard about it through, you know, different medias that have, you know, showcased these technology farms. And so they've inquired, and this year we think we're going to have quite a bit of representation from folks from other states coming to the field days to learn. We are using some international, some global technology, particularly some technology that's been, you know, perfected in Israel, They've now, some of the vendors here in Kansas have tried this equipment and are, making it available retail, but they are wanting to promote these at the tech farms as well. One in particular is called Phytech, which is an interesting piece of equipment where you actually attach a measuring device to a corn plant, and it's measuring the health of the corn plant, and it's got telemetry on it so that the producer can get results, to their cell phone or their computer, and tell what that corn plant's stress is and whether it needs moisture, it needs water or not. And the other thing that really we see throughout the tech farms, regardless of what type of irrigation system we have, is the soil moisture probes, where we're measuring soil moisture conditions from the surface to as deep as 48 inches. And again, that has telemetry on it. It's sending the information to a cell phone or to a tablet or a computer. And the producer can set in his pickup, and I've seen him show me the technology where they're going from one sprinkler to the next and looking and seeing what the condition of that field is from that moisture probe. And that gives them some confidence on whether they need to be running their system or turning it off. And that's really the management, regardless of what type of sprinkler system we have out there. It's the ability to have some confidence to leave the sprinkler off if soil conditions are such they don't need water. The soil moisture probe will tell them that. And we think that is really the key to saving water, is leaving the sprinkler off. And anecdotally, we hear a lot of information from some of our producers like Dwayne Roth that have left their sprinklers off longer than they thought they ever would. And they don't run as long at the end of the growing season. And K-State's done some research at their experiment field that said that when they shut the sprinklers off at the end of the growing season, their soil profile was still full. And so we're really learning a lot about the soil moisture conditions and irrigation with this program.
Do you see the new age producer getting ahead because of the water conservation implements they have put into place?
Yep, saving in pumping costs. Certainly there's numerous examples from our tech farms where they have saved in pumping costs. Other places where we're seeing some benefits are less maintenance on the sprinkler, especially with the Dragonline technology. We have no real mud problems with the wheels, the sprinkler wheels getting stuck, and gearboxes are lasting longer because they're not plowing through mud, because we're just not applying as much water, and we don't see the excessive, wetness at the surface. As a result, the sprinklers don't have as much trouble, traversing through the field. So we see reduced maintenance costs, we see reduced pumping costs, and then even in some cases we're seeing some reduction in nutrient costs because of the type of technology and how they're applying the water. They're maybe not overwatering and pushing that nitrogen through the root zone and letting it leach through, and more nutrients are being made available to the plant, which in turn means they can apply less.
How long will you monitor these farms?
Well, we originally set this up on a 3-year program. If we can afford, and we did get some additional money from the legislature this year to continue and expand these, it looks like to me, because we really had a couple of more wet years, and this, depending upon where you're at this year, you've been wet, but it's been spotty. So we were going to have some of our tech farms are going to experience a little more dry condition this year. So it'll be a real telling to see how things work this year in maybe a little drier environment. That said, the producers that we had last year, even in the areas that received good precipitation, said the moisture probes were just as important in measuring how much soil moisture we had from Mother Nature as much as we did from irrigation. And as a result, they left their sprinklers off probably longer than they would have ordinarily. So these tools are very valuable in a wet year or a dry year, but I'm really interested to see when we really have to lean on irrigation more because it's been more of droughty conditions. How are we doing on water use? We know that they're going to have to apply more water, but with this technology, are we going to see less overall water use than maybe we saw in the drought of 2010 and 2011? And this drought's nowhere close to that, but at least give us an indication that this technology can help mitigate water use, excessive water use during a drought.
Do you see different planting practices as a result of water conservation practices?
We do. Going back to the Sheridan County Lima, where they had an overall reduction in western Sheridan County, we saw a pretty significant change in the type of cropping. We saw less corn, more sorghum, more wheat. We saw irrigation on a half circle and the other half dry land. So you saw some management changes to stay within that overall reduced allocation. But again, economically, K-State did some analysis with some of the producers there, and the reports we've done for the first several years are indicating that, that from an economic standpoint, there hasn't been much of a dip from that standpoint. So the answer is yes. We certainly are seeing good positive results so far from really across the board.
Do you know how much water is needed?
The soil moisture probe will actually tell you how much your application needs to be. If you need to apply a half inch, if you need to apply an inch. The soil moisture probe and the agronomist that works with you, they'll send you a detailed report at least once a week or every day if you need some. That's based on the ET value, that's based on the weather patterns, based on the soil and your seed population. It's just not, install the probe and you walk away from it. It takes your planting date, the maturity of the corn, everything like that is how they develop the program on the watering management part of it.
What is a probe and how does it work?
Well, there's a lot of different types of probes, but generally speaking, it's got these, the device has got measures soil moisture at different depths, and then it sends that information, via either a cell phone signal in most cases, but the producer can pick that up on their device, and some are as simple as like a gas gauge. It will tell them whether their profile is full or they need to add water. And it can be as simple as that. And there are other techniques that not only provide them with some sort of a measurement of how much soil moisture is in there, but they give some interpretive guidance via a text message that will say, it looks like to me the conditions are such and looking at the weather forecast that they can leave their sprinkler off. Or they'll give them some indication, we think you've got about 3 days worth of water and maybe you ought to consider starting up on day 4 if we don't see any rain in the forecast. So they get that kind of technical advice, kind of somebody in their ear giving them a second opinion. They're looking at the data too, and the producer's looking at the data, and then they get somebody giving them some advice, similar to what you would get from a crop consultant. Only this is more focused on water management.
Do you still need to take soil samples by hand, or is there a better, more accurate way for doing that as well?
On a corn grower, we utilize a 3-foot soil moisture probe, and it has sensors every 4 inches. And if you take a 125-acre circle, they take the majority of the soil type in the circle. That's where the soil moisture probe is placed. And so once they installed it, it basically sends a message to your cell phone, your laptop, your iPad, exactly how soon you have to be across that probe, when the plant's actually going to need the water.
What is a pivot?
A center pivot is an average, the more popular, I guess, center pivot, or the most center pivot is 125 acres. It's in a circle. It irrigates in a circle continuous, and it's nozzled from the base of the pivot to the end. You'll have smaller orifices, and to the very end of the pivot, the orifices go up in size to regulate the water coming out for irrigation. They are coming up with different ways to irrigate. Variable rate irrigation. They're taking in these weather programs with these weather stations around the state. They're looking at heat indexes, stuff like that, and what the crop's taking up and what it's not. That's where the probe's so valuable.
What was the push to switch over to the pivots?
The switch to the different nozzle packages was just a better efficiency. And we actually found out that if we change a pivot to a bubbler versus an IWAB, we're usually getting our money back. It pays for itself, if not in a year or 2 years, just by the efficiencies on the economics part of it.
What are the drag lines between the lines and the bubblers?
Actually, on our center pivots, the majority we're going with is the bubblers, because it's just what it's set up to. I guess the only concern, a lot of the meetings we had is if everybody makes these conservation efforts and they install the bubbler or the dragon line, are they going to use less water, or are they going to grow more corn? A lot of producers are still going to grow more corn. we're going to have to look at alternative crops. And that's easy to say, but those alternative crops, they have to be economic viable also. They have to make the producer, they're going to have to pay his bills.
Since you're watering less, then are you able to conserve resources in other ways?
We're still using about the same amount of chemical. The fertilizer, we're fine-tuning that now actually also. We're actually are going to be using less fertilizer. We've proven, less is actually more in this case.
Are there government agencies involved in the type of technology you're using?
Yes, actually on the soil moisture probe, a soil moisture probe can run anywhere from $1,200 up. At the NRCS, they actually have some programs working with the GMDs. If a farmer goes to it, they'll actually fund the probe for free. You have to take some management to qualify for the probe.
Is this information being passed on to other producers?
Yeah, we've actually, like the first year, just a couple, well actually in Finney County, the first year that the it's actually called the RCPP. I couldn't even tell you what that stands for. But that's the deal where you go in and you give them your water use over the last, I think it was 5 years. And if you can apply for a soil moisture probe, all you have to do is, it takes about 10 minutes to apply, and end of the year, they reimburse you for the probe. The first year, I think there's only 2 people that did it, my nephew and myself. And now I think they have multiple applications, quite a few. I don't know the number, but it's a high number.
Do you think that this technology will run into the tech farms you have now?
Well, they are. They make a nice tool to kind of, obviously, they have them flying during the field days. But I think there's some scouting that takes place. Certainly there's scouting that happened before drones, which probably consisted of more walking. But drone technology has certainly been, I think, a big asset at the tech farms and other areas as a means of being able to scout for pests and areas that maybe you don't have a moisture probe, but you're seeing stress in the field, and to give them a good observational look at what the field looks like from the air.
What is the best and worst case scenario with water conservation?
The worst case scenario is if we cannot get everybody to agree on some type of conservation plan. And it's hard to get everyone to agree on something. You get 10 farmers in a room, if you can get two to agree to something. And I'm a farmer, so I'm telling you what, I'm part of the, I'm hoping I'm going to be part of the solution, but I've probably been part of the problem also. But you're going to have to adapt. You're going to have to be available to that adaptation to this technology. Most of the, I wouldn't say most, but there's just a lot of ways we could trim that waste off. We have people that still, after a rain event, they'll keep the center pivot running. If you have a soil moisture probe, it's going to tell you absolutely shut the pivot off. On a farm that I farm beside one of my neighbors with, he actually made their water available, their water report available. They used 10 more inches of water than I did. We actually, basically the same type of ground, but there's a 10 bushel difference. We actually had a 10 bushel increase over them. But when we broke down the economics of it, my circle actually was $48. It benefited $48 more dollars an acre than they did. That was the benefit. And that was after you paid for the probe. That's after you paid for the technology. There's the benefit right there. We did if you looked at the comparison where my neighbor pumped 10 more inches because he didn't have a soil moisture probe, we actually did a running deal. Okay, what if we just saved half of the 10 inches? Say if we just did 5 inches across the proposed KFL. Well, that just cut it in half, a savings of 5 inches. It actually leveled off the Ogallala, and in some cases it actually increased it on where it gained on static water level. So I mean, it's very doable. Even if a person cannot agree on a LEMA, if they just use the technology and if they did what the technology told them to do, we would have water savings. This guy was brushing his teeth with his daughter, and she shut the water off real quick. And he goes, "What are you doing?" She goes, "Look, we have to start saving this water better." And they run the water real slow. But in the end, the guy had a quote: "In the end, we can solve the water problem, but we need to have aggressive conservation. This is going to buy us time with technology." And that's what we do need to do. I don't think, we need to try to solve this problem on our own. They don't want government coming in here trying to tell us what to do, but we're going to need to do something sooner than later. We try to, we have a proposed KFL Lima in this area, and right now, it's not moving forward. It's not dead by any means because people are doing water conservation areas inside that proposed Lima. But if you look at we're setting up for another drought, and I hope we don't. The last 2 years we had over 200% average of rainfall. So we had wells go up about a foot, but they've actually dropped 70 foot in the last 10 years. So we're going to have to we'll have to be managers of that to eliminate the decline that's so steep.
So the next time you use water, remember, we all must be a part of the conservation effort if you want to pass on this land from generation to generation. Don't forget, if you want to check out this and more episodes of Real Ag, go to SmokyHillsTV.org. For the Real Ag crew, I'm Kyle Bauer, and this has been Real Ag.
Production of Real Ag is made possible in part by an underwriting grant from
the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by farmers.